If you're relying on county-wide headlines or national clickbait when looking at the real estate market right now, there's a good chance you're making decisions with the wrong data. Not all real estate markets are behaving the same right now, and if you want to time your move right, hyperlocal trends matter more than ever. So let's take a look at what's actually happening this April in the areas that really count. All right, when I say the market is shifting, I'm not just talking about price drops or faster sales. I mean what's happening where is changing fast. That's why I'm watching the following very specific areas this month, because my clients aren't moving all around all over Amador County. They're looking at more specific areas like Ione and Lake Camanche, Jackson, Sutter Creek, and Plymouth. But they're also crossing into areas like El Dorado Hills, Folsom, Rancho Murieta, Rancho Cordova, Galt, Herald, and Wilton. These are places my clients are actively buying and selling right now, and that's why I'm watching them very closely. But before we dive into all of that, let's still zoom out for a second into Amador County as a whole so we can get our bearings just a little bit. So we're sitting at 5.4 months of inventory, which keeps us in a neutral market, right between a buyer's and seller's market. That's up slightly from 5.2 months of inventory we saw last month, and is also up significantly from 4.1 months of inventory we saw this time last year. But what does that actually mean? Well, a neutral market typically means buyers and sellers negotiating on more even ground. But when we break it down by area, you'll see just how differently that neutral ground plays out depending on where you are. So now let's take a closer look into our core areas, starting with Ione and Lake Camanche. I love kicking things off in Ione and Lake Camanche area, not just because I live here, but because it continues to be a great barometer for market activity. We're currently sitting at 3.4 months of inventory, which keeps us in a neutral market, but we're moving much closer to the seller's market territory again. Last month, we were at 4.6 months of inventory, and this time last year, it was just 1.6 months of inventory. So inventory is tightening again, and it's something to watch. And there were 34 homes for sale, 13 went pending, and 10 closed in April. That's a steady uptick in activity month over month, especially with sold homes that went up 43% from last month. The median list price dipped just slightly to $555,000. That's down 1.2% from last month and down to about 3.5% from last year. But the median close price actually rose to $560,000. That's a 17.9% increase from last month and more than 15% higher than this time last year. So while those two numbers don't directly correlate because most homes don't list and close in the same month, they're still part of the bigger pricing picture. The list to close price ratio hit 100%, meaning sellers were getting full asking price on average. That's up from 98% last month and a 1% improvement over last year. Days on market dropped to 28, which is faster than both last month and last year, where they're both at 36 days on market. So bottom line, homes here are selling faster, pricing is holding strong, and buyer activity is staying steady. If you're in this market, you'll want to price strategically and be prepared to move quickly, whether you're buying or selling. Let's move over to Jackson, where we saw a definite cooling in the market last month. Inventory jumped to 6 months of inventory, which even though we're still technically in a neutral market here, that number puts us right on the edge of a shift towards the buyer's market. There were 30 homes for sale and only 5 closed, which is down from 9 in March. Pending sales also dropped by a third from 12 to 8. The median list price inched up slightly to $554,000, but the median close price fell to $350,000. That's a sharp drop from last month when it was at $440,000. Looking at the list to close price ratio, sellers were getting about 94% of their original list price. That's actually a reversal from last month when homes in Jackson were actually closing over asking at 101%. And homes here are taking a little longer to sell. The average days on market rose to 50, which is up from 42 in March. Now let's talk about Sutter Creek, where the market made a surprisingly strong comeback in April. Months of inventory dropped by almost in half, from 9.5 down to 4.8, which brings us back into the neutral market territory. There were 24 homes for sale, 5 closed, and 3 went pending. So while pending activity is still a bit slow, closed sales were up significantly from just 2 last month. The median list price held steady at about $655,000, but the median close price jumped to $654,000. That's up nearly 15% from March and almost 70% higher than this time last year. Sellers were getting about 96% of their original list price, which is a solid gain from the 89% we saw last month. And homes in Sutter Creek are moving a little bit faster too. Average days on market dropped from 125 down to 74. Now let's take a look at Plymouth, tucked into the heart of Amador's wine country and known for scenic views, acreage, and that quiet rural charm buyers love. Inventory rose slightly to 18 homes for sale, and while only 2 homes closed and 1 went pending, the months of inventory dropped from 16 down to 9. The median list price dipped to $1.15 million, which is down from over $1.22 million last month. And the median close price came in at $428,000, which is a big shift from last month that had nearly $1.24 million in a close price. But it's also a reminder that when only 1 or 2 homes sell, the data can swing wildly depending on what closed. This month, sellers were getting about 80% of their original list price, which is down from 100% last month. And the average days on market climbed to 144 days, which suggests homes are taking longer to move, especially if they're not priced to reflect buyer expectations. So if you own in Plymouth, just know timing and pricing strategy matter more than ever when inventory is high and buyer activity is low. Now, if you're watching from outside Amador County or thinking about moving to a little closer to Sacramento, here's a quick look at some of the additional areas I'm actively tracking for my buyers and sellers right now. In Rancho Murieta, 10 homes went pending. Sellers were getting about 98% of their asking price, and average days on market dropped from 86 to just 26 days. Rancho Cordova, the median close price came in at $626,000, which is down 6.1% from last month, but still up from a year ago. Inventory ticked up slightly with days on market average of 51 days. And in Galt, Herald, and Wilton, months of inventory jumped to 3.2, which is up from 1.5 last month. Median close price rose to $630,000 and days on market increased to 53 days, which is up from 38 last month. In Folsom, there was 119 homes sold with a median close price of $840,000. That's a slight dip from last month, but still holding steady overall. Average days on market dropped to 23 days. And in El Dorado Hills, median close price was $920,000. Inventory rose to 187 homes for sale, and average days on market stayed flat at 34 days. So if you're curious about your trends in your specific zip code or even your street, just reach out. I'm happy to help giving you those hyper-local updates for your specific market. Now it's time to talk mortgage rates, because even if you're not ready to buy or sell just yet, rates are still shaping everything from affordability to your sales strategy when the time comes to sell. And right now, mortgage rates are hovering in the mid 6% range, depending on your credit, loan type, down payment amount, as well as several other factors. But here's the thing. Mortgage rates don't move just because the Fed says say to. They're actually influenced more by the bond market, inflation data, and also investor confidence. So while the Fed has been holding steady on rate cuts, mortgage rates are still fluctuating based on what's happening in the broader economy. And if you've been following headlines about tariffs, inflation, or job market shifts, those all play into what rates are doing as well. For example, new tariffs on Chinese goods could push prices up on everything from building materials to appliances. Some experts argue this could be a short-term cost for a long-term gain, especially if it helps bring more manufacturing back to the United States. But that shift doesn't happen overnight. So higher short-term costs could reignite inflation, and inflation is the #1 enemy of lower mortgage rates. Meanwhile, uncertainty in the stock market tends to push investors towards bonds, which can lower mortgage rates. So it's a bit of a tug of war right now. And if you're watching from the sidelines, it's no wonder it feels so confusing. That's why I keep an eye on the economy as a whole in every market update, because even big picture moves can influence what buyers and sellers feel on the ground. Where will all this lead to next? Only time will tell. But I'll be right here watching the trends and breaking it down into plain English so you don't have to figure it all out on your own. And that's your market snapshot for April in Amador County and beyond. Some markets are heating up and others are leveling off, and a few are throwing a few curveballs. But remember, these stats are just a snapshot in time in our real estate market. The market is always moving, kind of like an airport. Some homes are just landing, some are getting ready to take off, and some are stuck circling the runway, wondering what's next. So if you're kind of feeling that way too, whether you're curious about your home's value, thinking about a move, or just trying to time it right, don't guess. Reach out and let's map out your next best move together in today's market. Oh, and if you ever wish someone would just explain all this market lingo in plain English, keep an eye out for my Market Stats 101 video. It's coming very soon, and trust me, you won't need a degree in economics to finally feel like you get this stuff. So stick around with me for more real estate insight just like this, and stay tuned for my May 2025 market update coming up next month.